Hello YouTube and welcome to my very first video. This right here is my first modified keyboard, the Kludge RK61. I've been using this keyboard for a little over 2.5 years now with, please don't judge me, Gateron blue switches in its stock form, and decided to get rid of the clicky sound and feel. I decided to mod this as much as I can for the least amount of money, since building a custom keyboard from scratch is way out of my budget. Turns out I'm a lousy accountant, as this was quite expensive and not budgety at all. By all means, this is no tutorial whatsoever. I just wanted to make a video where I time-lapse the whole process and just casually talk about it, in the hopes to inspire someone to mod their own keyboard. It's definitely worth the time. Hope you guys enjoy my first video. Go easy on me since I'm limited in skill and equipment when it comes to video production. Anyways, let's start this video with a sound test of the stock keyboard with the blue switches. As of the nature of keyboards, I started by removing all keycaps. These are the stock keycaps. They are made out of ABS and are backlit. Kludge is advertising them with their special ergonomic angle of 8 degrees, whatever that means. Anyway, I'm tired of the look of the stock keycaps, so I decided to swap them out. Since I'm using German layout, my options are quite limited in certain keycap themes. Unfortunately, to combine all my wishes and having it in the same German ISO layout proved itself to be impossible. At least if you want to stay within budget. I found a set of keycaps on Amazon with the matching color combo I wanted, but an ANSI layout, although they include the ISO entry keycap, so I decided to go with the following plan, using the new keycaps for the outer keys, which aren't backlit unfortunately, and go with the stock keycaps for the center keys. As you saw, I removed the case and unplugged the battery, since it's also a wireless keyboard, even though I only use it wired. Then I proceed to pull out the switches. Why is he pulling this hard? What is he doing? Oh my god! Well, turns out I was pulling it out the wrong way the whole time. Switch got 2 clips at the top and bottom, not left and right, you fool. Worst part is, I realized just before I was done with the last 2 or 3 switches. Anyway, I'd say we skip this torturous event, I guess. Moving on by taking the screws off, so I get to the PCB, disassemble all stabilizers and clean the surface of the plate before we get to the first mod, the silencer mod. So I basically saw a lot of people using pre-cutted foam for their plate, but those seem usually very thin, and besides, I couldn't find pre-cutted ones for the RK61 anyway. So I got these sticky square-shaped foam pads from Amazon, which are really thick compared to the stuff that's usually on the plates. Got me worried at first because of the thickness, but I figured if it's not working, I will just remove them. We've made it to the first discipline of endurance, applying every square of foam one by one on the plate. For the edges and corners, I cut up some of the squares so I have little stripes to go along the edges of the plate. After this fiddling, we move on to our next mod, the easiest, cheapest and fastest one in this video, the tape mod. The tape mod is, as you can tell from the name, done with tape. I'm using blue tape from Scotch. It's basically just painter's tape, so just go ahead and take the cheapest you could find. I bought this one because I thought it would look very nice on the PCB where no one will ever see it, so you get the point. We just tape up the back of your PCB with 3 layers of painter's tape. Well, and there's evidence to this being my first video. Side note for the next one though, keeping the stuff that's meant to be recorded in front of the camera. Oh yeah, and for the love of God, don't forget to poke holes into the tape where screws are placed. Just trust me. And now to the only mod you could do for free, the foam mod. As you can see, I'm already cutting up a piece of foam so it'll fit the case. The reason why this is the only mod you could do for free is because this foam pad I got right here comes from the inside of a packaging which was used to ship a phone. My friend kindly told me that I can have his trash for my keyboard. Jokes aside though, after I filled this foam, I knew immediately it had the right consistency for the job. As far as I know, you could use any kind of soft material inside the case, as long as it's dampening. People use all kinds of stuff, from cotton to foam pads to the fillings of a pillow and so on. Forgot to mention the stabilizers. These are plate-mounted Durock stabilizers, which you will need in order to fit the RK61. Also, I am cutting the stems plain, so they are more stable, I guess? I've been told that these stabilizers sit much tighter and have less rattle. Speaking of, this tape I'm using now for the stabs is plumber's tape. That's why it's called Plumbers Mod. Plumbers Mod essentially reduces rattle of the stabs by wrapping plumber's tape around the ends of the rods, which are then inserted into the stems. Also, I want to tell you that in this case, bigger isn't better. Try to use only 1, maybe 2 layers. Even 2 layers can be enough to render your stabilizer stuck, if not applied evenly. So be patient and gentle. With the Plumbers Mod done, now to the lubing of the stems and the housing of the stabilizers. The stems need to be lubed outside, but only on their left and right, as well as the housing, which needs to be lubed from the inside. As to how much lube do I use, usually I would say that's left to your guts to decide, but me personally, I am careful with the lube. First of all, because this Krytox stuff is too expensive to waste, and also because I've read that too much lube isn't useful at all. Rather, it can cause problems with your stabs. Same goes with Lubing Switches, which we will discuss a bit later on. I just use the lube in a sense that you cannot see it after application. So there should be a glossy look to it, but not exactly white. Also, I forgot to mention that I use dielectric grease for the rods of the stabilizers before I put them into the housing. In this part I am just trying to fix my mess partly on my lap, because now I am test fitting the case and trying to put everything back together, but guess what? I forgot the holes in the tape, hence why I said in the beginning, for the love of God, poke holes into your tape and foam mod before test fitting. It'll save you a lot of time. And finally, it's the endgame level of endurance discipline, lubing the switches. As for the switches themselves, I got myself Gazoo Boba U4Ts, hope that's pronounced right, from Keycap.com. Originally I was planning to get myself Taxi Neapolitan ice cream switches, but unfortunately CanonKeys.com was the only site that had them in store, but since Canon Keys ships from the US, I think, or China, I don't know for sure, the shipping costs somewhere around 30 euros. That's way too much considering the switches themselves cost 45 euros. Keycap didn't have any of the switches I wanted besides the Boba U4Ts, which I am still impressed of because of the thockiness. Back to the lubing process. The thing I got in front of me is a lubing station. You don't necessarily need one, it just makes your job a bit easier. So what I'm doing now is opening up every single switch with the switch opener that was included with the lube station. After opening a switch, you can set the bottom housing, the stem, the spring and the top housing on the lube station into their designated openings. Now, lubing switch is pretty simple but very fiddly. The bottom housing has some sort of rails for the stem. Just lube the contact points there, as well as the socket where the spring is sitting on, and just a tiny weeny whiny bit the spring itself. At least that's my preference. With the last of the switches looped and plugged in, it's time to safety check that every single key is actually plugged in properly and working. So I go to keybr.com and just press every key to see if I get the signal or not. I have a pen and paper to write down which keys aren't reacting. After discovering every single key that is not responding when pressed, I pulled the switches, and to my surprise, I managed to bend the pins of so many switches. So if you encounter faulty keys, don't panic, just check the pins of the switches. If they are bent, just carefully bend them back in place. And a quick tip from me, if the pins are only bent at the very top, use some scissors to get the needed leverage for bending a very short part of the pin. You'll get the hang of it. Finally, at last, the keycaps. This is the point where we are done. Enjoy the moment or rush the hell through it because you've been sitting there for the last 8 hours trying to upgrade a keyboard. That was quite an experience, working non-stop for 8 hours with such little details to consider all the time. I have to say this was extremely fun, I enjoyed it a lot and recommend this to everyone who misses to zone out while doing something fun, just like in the old days. If you made it this far, I am happily thanking you for your attention and time. I hope I could spark something inside of you to try it for yourself. I would feel honored if you leave me a comment on how I did for my first video and keyboard ever. On that, I wish you a good day and hope to see some of you again.